The WrestleMania Minutes on Down the Aisle Wrestling Podcast with Robbie Mack and Kevin Laramie. Here's Kevin Laramie. Tyson and Austin, Rob.
That's right, Kevin. We talked about the Attitude Era getting the seeds planted in our last show. Well, the tree of the Attitude Era was fully grown for WrestleMania 14.
WrestleMania 14. Wow. From the Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts. Just for me, I vividly remember that period from between 13 and 14. I was listening to every single one of the shows. It's when the Attitude Era became what it is. It's when wrestling became what wrestling is to me. How big it is today and stuff. It was the beginning of that. Yeah, the WWE was not as big as they became after, but that day in 98, the weeks coming into this, it was something magical.
Yeah, WWF was really turning up the heat to compete with WCW because WCW was still winning at this time. But with the addition of guys like Mike Tyson and just the raunchier storylines and just going in this direction, not only did they overtake WCW this year, but after a few months, they firmly put them in the rearview mirror, and we all know how that story ends.
I know, it was just a great moment in the history of wrestling. The fact that Vince McMahon, with a lot of money, cost a lot of money to bring Tyson for the Royal Rumble as a guest in the box, and then TV's heading into WrestleMania, and then WrestleMania itself, and the fact that they need to negotiate.
There was a lot of...
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, no. I was going to say, Kevin, yeah, I was just going to touch upon exactly what you said as far as, like, negotiations and money being spent.
Not just that, there was a rumor that Eric Bischoff was going to try to sign Tyson because they had an agreement, but they didn't sign anything between McMahon and Tyson. And Tyson's people went to Bischoff and told him, according to Dave Meltzer, told them, we got up for this, give us more, and we'll come to your place. So the other guys will really look bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you can't blame Mike Tyson's people. You know, he's got to look out for his best interests. And
what's best for business.
The most I remember from this is that when Tyson was first announced, and obviously the whole thing with Stone Cold, what had happened was everyone thought that Tyson and Austin were going to wrestle at WrestleMania. And I think the reason why they couldn't do that is that they couldn't get the I don't know exactly what it was, the licensing or something or other that Mike Tyson couldn't work in the ring. Did Meltzer say anything about that, or did you know anything about that, Kevin, why that didn't happen?
No, I didn't. No. I did, but the championship needed to pass too, right? There was a moment where Stone Cold got crowned and eventually got that's Smoking Skull belt in the weeks after that and all that. Yeah, that WrestleMania was memorable, especially the main event. But I remember more about this period is the Raw after this WrestleMania. The new genesis of the new DX. All that with the coming back of X-Pac and all that. That Raw is like etched in my memory, Rob.
Yeah, no, and I remember that Raw quite well. And not only that, but I mean, not only with that stuff, and not only with that Raw, Kevin, just kind of over the next couple of weeks, the next few weeks, how we started to get the McMahon versus Austin feud. And probably the biggest feud that you and I have seen in professional wrestling up to date, you know, the most heated feud of all time. And just, not only that, so when I think of WrestleMania 14, I think of the seeds being planted for McMahon and Austin. And we only knew McMahon as the announcer. And then he came out as a dickhead billionaire owner who screwed over Bret Hart. And
No, Rob. Bret screwed Bret.
Well, you know what, Kevin? You kind of gotta figure. I think they all screwed each other, but I think.
Well, it was fun at least.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. So at the end of the day, for me, that's what I remember the most about WrestleMania 14. Not just the event itself, but the whole thing that came after and what it really led to.
But in fact, I'm doing an impression of not McMahon. I'm doing an impression of JP Saru doing an impression of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, I don't think that his can be duplicated. His is perfect. So.
Well, I can try.
Yeah, you kind of sound like a grunting gorilla. That could be your.
Yeah, that's my gimmick.
That could
Spiritual
be your
kid
that
of
could be your
George
angle.
Animal Still. All right, let's go into the details for WrestleMania 14. Like we were saying, it was at a Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts.
Hmm.
A brand spanking new Fleet Center, I have to say. The Boston Garden closed a year prior to this. It was one of the first big pay-per-view held in Boston in a long time. But so 19,028 people attended WrestleMania 14. And it was still it wasn't easy to sell the tickets because, like we were saying, the winners of the wrestling war back then were still WCW every Monday night.
That's right. And there was still that playing catch up from WWF. And the whole, no, don't get me wrong, this event really helped. And Austin being led as the leader of the Attitude Era really, really put them on the precipice of getting a victory over WCW. But you're absolutely right, Kevin. WCW was still winning the war back then.
All right, what was your favorite match in this momentous pay-per-view? Looking back at just the result for a second on Wikipedia and trying to remember the match, there was a lot of famous name on this card.
Hmm.
LOD, Tammy Lynn Sitch herself, Sonny, Taka fucking Michinoku,
Hmm.
Triple H, Owen Hart, Mark Merrow, The Rock, Mark Henry, D'Lo Brown, Ken fucking Shamrock, which you can listen to in the last episode of Down the Aisle Wrestling Podcast, Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, Taker, Kane, Stone Cold Michaels. A who's who of the Attitude Era was on this show, Rob.
And you also forgot making his WrestleMania debut, Mr. Pete Rose.
Getting tombstone by Kane.
The first of three appearances by Mr. P. Rose. My favorite match, Kevin, if I can be totally honest with you, nothing really jumped out
No.
as from a work weight rate standpoint from this match like some other WrestleManias were. And I think that was really indicative of the time that work rate kind of took a back seat to storytelling and booking, as you would remember from the Attitude Era when, an hour of it would be segments and only 45 minutes would be wrestling. But if I had to pick a match, and even though it wasn't the greatest match on the card, and even though it probably wasn't the best match they could do due to the limitations of Shawn Michaels' back, you have to go with the main event. Not just not based on a working rate standpoint, just based on what it represented in the end.
I'm going with the match, not because it was the greatest match, because it's a gimmick match, it was a dumpster match, but because of the angle going into that match when the New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, put Chainsaw Charlie, a.k.a. Terry Funk, and Mick Foley, a.k.a. Cactus Jack, inside the dumpster and threw him off 10 feet off the stage through a chance of boot, and it had a real feeling to it, and that angle was I was not scared because in 1998 I was 14 freaking years old, but I was intrigued and I thought kayfabe was broke and it was real. Anyways, that moment is really etched in my memory, and I really remember that angle. That's why that match is memorable to me. Like you said, though, there was no match that stole the show because the showstopper himself had limitation in that pay-per-view in the main event, but eventually Dyson, right hook, Michaels down, down goes Michael, down goes Michaels.
And that was the whole thing of the show. And Kevin, it's when you think about it, the whole stealing the match, stealing the show at WrestleMania is, you know what? Believe it or not, is a relatively new thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Within like the last 10 years or so, when you look
Since
at
the
WrestleMania,
Stadium era, I believe. It does fit with the Stadium era.
yes, 100%. It's a relatively new thing, and not to say that there hasn't been great matches on WrestleMania, of course, but I think from the wrestlers' standpoint themselves, they really save their best, save their all for the WrestleMania for the grand stage,
For the grandest stage of them all.
the showcase of the immortals.
The granddaddy of them all. Anyways, WrestleMania 14, it's a wrap. Talk to you soon for WrestleMania 15, which is not that memorable compared to 14.
Actually, to be honest with you, Kevin, WrestleMania 15 is a lot more memorable for me than 14.
Oh, well, talk to you soon about WrestleMania 15.